Hey everyone, hope you're doing well. Let's take a look at this week's astrological report for May 26th through June 1st of 2026. This week, the main event is going to be the Sagittarius Full Moon. That'll be exact early morning on Sunday, May 31st. Other than that, we're going to have the moon waxing all through the sign of Libra, all through Scorpio, becoming full in Sagittarius and ingressing Capricorn by next Monday. We also have a few major aspects taking place, including today. The Sun is forming a trine aspect with Pluto. I'll explain what that means in this video. And then we're also going to have Venus forming a first quarter square with Saturn, exact on Thursday, May 28. On May 29, Friday, we also have Neptune making an exact in conjunction to the South Node, which is at 4.5 degrees of Virgo. And then it looks like by next Monday, Mercury will make a sextile aspect from Gemini to Chiron, entering the last degree of Aries. And Mercury will also be at a critical last degree on that day and then change signs. By next Monday on June 1st, Mercury will ingress Cancer, change of perception, and generally a change for how people will be thinking about things and communicating themselves. So those are the major aspects, of course, written out in the description below if you're new here. Check that out with timestamps. And yeah, with that, let's get started here for Tuesday. On May 26th, we start things off with the moon approaching 12 degrees here of Libra. The moon has just made an opposition with Saturn earlier this morning, but it's going to be separating from that for the rest of the day. So things are starting to enter opposition now, building up to that full moon by this weekend on May 31st. So moon opposite Saturn, first thing in the morning, things can be a little heavier, a little more challenging. It's more of a serious mood. But with the moon here in Libra for another day and a half here, it's about trying to find better balance with things, how to look at things more objectively, how to weigh things out. It's also being ruled by Venus down in Cancer, so it still brings a lot of energy back down to your house of Cancer, wherever that is in your chart and what that means for you. But generally, it's about home and family and safety, security needs, and what's going on in your inner world and feelings about things. So try to be more objective. But because Venus is in charge, we still have a mutual reception going on with the moon in Libra being ruled by Venus, and Venus in Cancer is being ruled by the moon. So they are helping each other out in this moon phase here, which can be much better than otherwise. There can be a feeling that we have a stronger Venus right now and a stronger moon in this position. So again, it's trying to make things a little more pleasant, be more diplomatic and graceful, trying to be more compromising. And it usually puts more emphasis on relationships and trying to bring better balance to relationships. But because the moon also formed that opposition with Saturn and was square Venus late last night, early this morning, it's separating from that square as well. It's kind of activating this Venus square Saturn. Yeah, Venus is entering 9 degrees today, and Saturn is still at 11 degrees, approaching 12. So it's within orb of that square already. So we're going to be dealing with that Venus-Saturn square most of this week until it's perfected, and then it'll start separating from that after we get past Thursday night and Friday. So it shows that we have some serious relationship vibes in the air that are going to be a part of this week. And that can be on personal levels, just how you're feeling about your own relationships. And then on the world level, between nation states, there's serious developments here. And with the moon in Libra, of course, it's trying to make deals. It's trying to negotiate. It's trying to bring peace. But we did see that there has been challenges. There's been a lot of intensity. Just looking at this chart, we see that there's still a lot of intensity in the background. We have Mars, which is only barely separated from that square to Pluto. It's still activated in the background, even though it perfected yesterday. And we did see, as predicted, earthquakes, volcanoes, and a military event yesterday, and then extreme storms. And it just kind of shows whatever's going on, there's more extremism, there's more intensity that comes along with life when Mars is in this pretty tight square. So that's going to be separating all week long, but it's still in the background. And again, I think things are just a little more serious in the mood with this moon activating Saturn and then Venus now approaching Saturn. I'll talk more about the Venus-Saturn and what it means when we get to Thursday. But today, the moon here is separating from Saturn. Now, the other major aspect, as I mentioned, is the Sun in Gemini forming that trine to Pluto. So that just also adds to the overall intensity that's in the background. And this is more of a social. The Sun in Gemini is about communications. It's more intellectual. It's also, next to that Uranus, which was conjunct for the first time in 78 years in this sign of Gemini. So it's been bringing up a lot of radical ideas and changes and the need for liberation and just things that are more unpredictable and volatile. But now it's connecting to Pluto in the group, in the community, and so is Mars in more of a difficult aspect. So there's transformation in the air. There's things that are trying to change, but also intensity with perhaps friends and group and people and organizations and the more social side of life. And Venus over here is totally on a different page from the social side of life. Even Venus building that square to Saturn can show some limitation in the social desire or some distance in relationships. And then it can also talk about obligation and duty based on things of the past that I'll get more into. But still, there is a spotlight on power and control and transformation today, as the moon, again, is trying to weigh things out, showing that people are trying to weigh things out and be more objective and intellectual about it. And then the moon will actually be building up this trine all day long to Mercury. So really there's kind of a gap here in major aspects for the day until that moon makes that aspect to Mercury. So let me put this on the hour here. All right, the moon moving forward all day long. And there's still this finger of God. It's not perfect because Neptune is almost at 4 degrees. Pluto's at 5.5, and the South Node is at 4.5. But it's still been in the background for a while here. Again, just indicating fateful dynamics in the air and the world, and especially for the beginning of Virgo, where the apex is. So again, the South Node in Virgo is still asking people to kind of let go of the need for perfection and having everything just right and a perfect plan and be more flowing, go with the flow with the North Node in Pisces, be more open to new possibilities and expansion into unknown territory. And also, of course, dealing with health matters is still a very fateful dynamic in the air and in the world. There's things about health that need to change. And then also on individual levels, how people work, the details of life are trying to change. And there's some things that need to be purged still and purified and reorganized. And so that has been continuing for a while, which will continue until later this summer. But as the moon is waxing forward, again, it's building that trine. So that trine to Mercury is going to be by tonight. The moon in Libra, as Mercury reaches 20 degrees of Gemini, and the moon reaches 20 degrees of Libra. So again, this is going to be super late at night before that's exact. So as we get closer to tonight, and for other people, it'll be early morning on Wednesday when that's exact. So this is the West Coast when it's about the 11 o'clock hour. There can just be a better opening for communication and making deals and being even more objective and open-minded and just a better flow with how people are thinking and expressing, communicating themselves late tonight. So it could be good if you are up late tonight in a relationship dynamic. I think that there could be a good vibe for having conversations, and it's not too deep, although again, there's still a mutual reception with Venus and Cancer. With Venus in Cancer, there's still kind of this desire for more of a sensitive relationship vibe on a more personal level, more of a nurturing type of love energy in the background, but there's still a little bit of distance and seriousness and maybe a little more of a detached energy that comes along with this because of the air and then the square to Saturn. But it could still be a great night for communicating with people and expressing yourself if need be. So those are the major aspects for Tuesday. Let's move this forward, and we're going to get to Wednesday on May 27. And first thing early morning on Wednesday, we start off with the moon in Libra, again, still in a mutual reception with Venus. So again, it also speaks a lot about family relationships that could be in the air here with people's needs to find better balance and harmony with relationships in general, but especially even family relationships. But first thing in the morning with the moon square Jupiter, there could be kind of a mood that's out of balance. It could be a little more challenging to find that harmony and that balance because people's needs are a little bit overinflated and people could be seeking something to be fulfilled that's a little bit out of harmony first thing in the morning. Or it could just show circumstances are big, and kind of people could be overextended with what's going on, or just circumstances, again, could be a little bit over the top first thing super early. And this is 3 o'clock in the morning, roughly. Actually, it's going to be more like 4 o'clock hour or so into 5 o'clock early morning on the West Coast. So it'll be first thing, if you're on the East Coast, it'll be definitely relevant. And that can sometimes just show that it could literally be people have a big appetite for something, but it could also be on different levels too, just people's moods and feelings for something. And it can also be a super generous aspect. People can be overly generous. People could just be overdoing emotions and feelings in different types of ways. First thing on Wednesday. The moon is also building up to oppose Chiron. Again, and Chiron is going to be entering the last critical degree of Aries. So I've talked about this before, the people that are under this rare Chiron transit that only happens every 49 to 50 years. So people that have 29, roughly 28 to 29, but actually for the whole next year until it's done fully by 2027, it's people that have 26 through 29, and then even 0 degrees of the fixed signs will get it a little bit too. But 26, 27, and 28 degrees of the cardinal signs have already been under this, and it'll go back and forth for the next year. So 29 degrees is the degree that's about to experience it again for the first time in 49 years, depending on your age, if you've been alive that long. So as the moon reaches 29, there's already a sense of urgency. On Wednesday afternoon, the moon will be in Libra for the whole first half of the day into the afternoon hours. There will be a mood change as the day goes on, but things get a little more critical mood-wise, circumstances-wise, by the afternoon hours. And there's a sense of urgency for something to change, but with the moon opposite Chiron, it can also, again, activate sensitivities, wounds, and insecurities for self and relationships. It's going to really bring up an opposition for us to look at. Now, not every single person will be affected or feel it, but I think if you do have 28 and especially even 29 degrees of Aries, Cancer, Libra, or Capricorn, then you're definitely under this rare transit. And it's trying to show you, each round that it gets activated for the next year in multiple different ways and times, it's going to try to show you where you are wounded or where you need to deal with something, that's sensitive, or again, bringing up some insecurities or vulnerabilities that need to be looked at and dealt with, within your relationships and yourself mainly, because that's where it's rooted, is the self. But other people could be reflecting that wound back to you as the moon goes through here. And then things are going to be changing because the moon will change signs into a little more of a difficult position. The moon will ingress Scorpio for the afternoon hours. So that changes things. Now there's no longer a mutual reception between the moon and Venus. And the moon in Scorpio is in a place that it's not always easy to be. It brings up a mood that's much deeper. There's a need for people to kind of deal with power and control. And usually the moon in Scorpio is about the need to control your emotions and your feelings. We don't always see everything going on when the moon is going through Scorpio. There's a lot of undercurrents. It does increase intuition and feelings and intensity, but we don't always see how everybody else is feeling, and that can lead to manipulation and things that are happening under the surface. But it also is going to be activating a pretty intense T-square with Pluto and Mars again. And as the moon ingresses Scorpio, now it is being ruled by this Mars. And Mars in Taurus is debilitated, but it's coming off of that square with Pluto, so it's still within orb, but it's separating. And I think that this moon will close that out once it gets past Pluto and Mars. But Mars is in charge, and Mars is in Taurus, so there's still like a tension here on action and aggression to not be overly aggressive. You know, Taurus wants to keep the peace, keep things calm, slow things down, be more stable and secure. And as Mars has been in this tension, it could also show another round of extreme energy or intense situations in the world, such as, again, storm energy that we've been seeing in different places and other Earth events that we've been seeing. There could be another round of that. But also it's probably about money and resources. Scorpio is a financial sign, Taurus is a financial sign, and they're in opposition. So there's a lot about money and resources, personal values that are going through something here. Scorpio rules banks, so a lot of financial energy could be in the air by Wednesday. This is actually Wednesday night, so it could carry over into Thursday as well. And for the next 2.5 days, the moon here is in Scorpio, waxing towards that full moon. So the moon does have a lot of light on it here as it's going through Scorpio, so it's also bringing up a lot more that's normally hidden and below the surface that's not always easy to see. There's still hidden dynamics and hidden moods and feelings of things, but we have an opportunity to see it a little more than normal because of the amount of light on the moon. And let's see here, the moon won't reach that exact opposition until the next day. So the only other aspect here on Wednesday night is the moon in conjunct to Uranus. So right as this moon comes in, changes the overall flavor of things, the moon is kind of at odds with this Uranus placement down here in Gemini. So an in conjunction can show, again, having to make adjustments. There could be volatility with this change of mood that comes in. Some unpredictable dynamics in the neighborhood, with siblings, with extended family, or the local streets and local environment. There could be some glitches here and there with certain things that comes in Wednesday night. And there's still a stronger need for intimacy. So now we have both the moon and Venus in water signs. So there is kind of a stronger need to have more depth and connection and intimacy within relationship. But again, Venus is approaching 11 degrees. It's getting super tight with that square to Saturn. So there's still likely going to be some challenges and some serious energy that's in relationship and not just overly smooth or overly easy. Of course, that's just generally speaking, but that's the background for the whole planet as we're going through Wednesday night and then into Thursday early morning, May 28, the moon in Scorpio begins to make these aspects to Mars and Pluto. We do have a lot of different aspects here on May 28. The first one is the moon making an in conjunction to Neptune, as the moon is sextile the south node. So this is pretty tight. It's not perfect. Usually, again, when I work with the finger of God aspects, I like it to be perfectly exact and don't give it orbs. This is within 1 degree. It could still be relevant, but Neptune's at the apex on the world level here. So the moon has to adjust. There's adjustments to the outer world versus what's hidden deep below. And this is super early, so it's like late Friday night into Thursday morning hours. So a lot of people, will be sleeping, of course, during this aspect. But it's also a fateful aspect because the moon is connecting to the south node and trine that north node. So whatever is happening super early on Thursday morning, it has ripple effects for the future. And people are being pulled into the path that they're meant to be on. Even if they don't recognize what's going on in the moment, there could still be hidden ripple effects for the future. Just consider it a fateful day. And then the moon does make that aspect to Pluto and Mars. So there's likely to be another round of intensity and some extreme energy in the background for Thursday and maybe into Friday. So the moon will make the square to Pluto first before the opposition to Mars. But again, it kind of forms a T-square in a little bit of a wider orb to both of these. So the good news is the moon will close out this aspect between Mars and Pluto fully, but it's also going to have one last activation possibly here. So this is a kind of a difficult moment. Every time the moon goes through Scorpio, it has to square Pluto for the next couple decades, really. So it's in the early degrees for now. And, Scorpio also deals with crisis and death issues, and it's connecting to Pluto, which is the lord of the underworld within the group and the community, and power dynamics, power control issues, undercurrents of manipulation and control could be going on. Something that feels intense for people could be happening. We're not comfortable with the power dynamic that's playing out, so there could be some issues too within your friendships or with a connection with somebody going on. It could also talk about financial energy again, especially because Venus is also getting super close to that square with Saturn and will be exact in that square by later on Thursday night. So again, something financial in either banks or the markets could be happening on Thursday into Friday. It's only temporary, so I don't think it's anything too big or to worry about for the long term, but it's just a temporary aspect that we deal with, these ups and downs of life. That's what astrology shows us. So I think, again, intense relationship activity, intense financial energy, a sense of forced change and transformation in the air. People's moods are a little more edgy. And you can just look at the screen here with these different aspects. It's all over the place. We got squares, oppositions, inconjunctions, some trines. It's a mixed bag here, but there's a lot of tension for sure on Thursday. Pretty much all day. Now this is still happening pretty early in the morning when this moon squares Pluto. It's 4:30 on the West Coast, so first thing, when people are up and about for the rest of the country, and it's late morning, afternoon in Europe, so a lot of us will be feeling this. And then the opposition occurs after that. The moon is opposing Mars, which, again, adds a lot of emotional intensity, a little bit of edginess, and there could be some aggression, there could be some conflicts here on Thursday, and it could be on multiple levels. It could just be showing that whatever's going on in the world, there's just more intensity and extremism that comes along with it. So that includes weather and earth events and military, possibilities again. Although I do think things could be coming to a head here for late May into June with this Sagittarius full moon that I'll talk about when we get to that point. But things are waxing towards a culmination point. So this could be one last little trigger in the temporary for aggression of what's going on. But there definitely could be social conflicts too. And it feels because Venus is within that square to Saturn, that usually shows some distance within relationships and kind of some more of a distance within social activity. The desire isn't as social as much in this dynamic. There's deeper things going on. There's more of a pull inward, and there could be some conflicts in groups and community or social events or other, politics for sure, and other things in the world that are a little bit dangerous here for people. Of course, the odds are that you're fine because there's so many people in the world and not everybody will have some major event when this happens. But there's likely to be, things all around the world in different places that are showing some conflict and intensity here on Thursday. So just put yourself in a good place. Don't get wrapped up into power control dynamics and manipulation and these undercurrents that are taking place, and just be aware of your environment and understand other people too. If you're not seeing people respond to you in a certain way in a relationship, then understand it's the background, it's the astrology, especially with this Venus square Saturn going on. And yet the mood could still have a strong desire for a connection and deeper intimacy with people, but it might not be as easy in this moment in relationships, especially by Thursday night too. And then, again, so I think that the good news is after the moon gets through this T-square, it's going to close out those issues of whatever we've been dealing with for last week into this week in relationship stuff and money. But then the moon will be in conjunct to the sun in Gemini at the same time. So there's also, these lights are on two different pages. The sun down here with Uranus and Gemini, very different from the moon in Scorpio. Again, the moon in Scorpio is about all or nothing and intensity and connection and feelings and emotions that are trying to be controlled. And Sun Uranus energy is about liberating yourself and breaking free, having independence, thinking very differently too. That's a lot about this, is the intellectual side of life and how people are thinking about things. And so how people feel and what people are focused on, they're on two different pages. Things aren't flowing as nice. Things aren't as cooperative generally with this dynamic in the air with all these different aspects on Thursday morning. But then there's one easy aspect, and that's the moon forms a trine to Venus for a few hours as all this is going on, and that's going to be by midday into the afternoon, well, I guess evening here, so it'll be Thursday evening, Thursday night, depending on where you live. So it's like we get three different aspects all at the same time with this moon in Scorpio trine Venus in the water element, but then Venus is making that exact square to Saturn, and the moon is in conjunct to Saturn. So it's a mixed bag here. The moon trine Venus shows that there is something here that's trying to be worked out in a relationship. And this square between Venus and Saturn, it really comes back to their conjunction. So this is a first quarter square, meaning that it's connected to things of the past, which was when Venus was in Aries, conjunct Neptune and Saturn in early March. And so everything that's kind of been building up within relationships and money since early March, it's reaching a little bit of a tension point here on how to move forward. Remember, the first quarter is always a challenge on how to move something forward. So it's about looking at your commitments within relationships or other financial things that were rooted back in early March. And so Venus square Saturn in this first quarter, it's going to bring up a lot more of a serious, kind of intense relationship vibe in the air. Relationships are much more serious right now. But again, on one level, for some people, there could be a pullback, like a distance within some relationships. In another scenario, it could be a sense of duty and obligation. Again, that was rooted back in March when you were making commitments of some type or doing something with others, and that commitment, that duty will be tested in this first quarter. Are you still committed to this relationship or that scenario that you were involved in or that financial situation, or do you need to make adjustments and let something go or change something in that? But there could also be a sense like, you might not feel free in that because, again, there's a sense of duty and obligation that can come along with it. And then the mood, the circumstances, it is flowing where something could be worked out in this. It doesn't have to be totally bad, but it's also going to be a challenge within that situation as the moon connects to Venus. So there's an opportunity to work something out perhaps on Thursday night with somebody, but it still comes with a challenge generally here. And there can also be more inhibition, in this phase. Again, not as social, not as outward, kind of pulling into your own world and your own need for safety and security and comfort, things like that. And it's also considered a little bit of a tough love vibe in the air. So you got to, don't put too much expectations on people to respond to you in a certain way. And if you see a mood or somebody not responding in the way that you want, then no, it's this background astrology and it makes sense if you see it. And not every single person will experience something difficult. It all depends on how this aligns with your birth chart. But I would say if you have 11 to 12 degrees of one of the cardinal signs, so Aries, Cancer, Libra, Capricorn, then you're wrapped up in this dynamic, especially if you have 11 to 12 Cancer and Aries, then you're definitely under that. And if you have one of those, then you're under a rare Saturn transit. And that's the other thing now, is that Saturn is entering 12 degrees for the first time in 3 decades. So if you have 12 degrees in your chart, and again, in the cardinal signs, then you're under this Saturn transit now. And it's already been building up. So 11 degrees just went through it. And I'm under it too. I have 12 degrees of Mercury in Libra with Pluto. So I'm definitely under this Saturn transit. And Venus doesn't really like me all that much in this position of Cancer. Oh well, those are the ups and downs of life that we all go through, cycles. But the moon at least is connecting. If it wasn't for the moon, it could be a lot worse of whatever's taking place here. But it's still going to be a challenge overall. In relationship, it could also affect money and resource situations in the market, like I said, or something happening with banks or markets, some sort of announcement or change. And if there is any challenge in markets or, financially on Thursday into Friday, it's only temporary. It's not going to last. This is just, a Venus transit that goes through every year, and moon changes quickly. So it's not that big of a deal, but there definitely could be something happening financially as well at the end of the week. And the other aspect is the moon I already mentioned that, in conjunct to Saturn. So having to make adjustments between the inner, deeper side of life versus what's outward in the self, and commitments and responsibilities. And really looking at how, if there is a challenge financially, it's about how to find solutions. What do we need to do to change it, to move it forward, to make it better? And this is the last kind of hiccup for Venus, because this Sagittarius full moon is going to lead to abundance by June. That's what I mentioned about the new moon and what this whole cycle will lead to. It's going to lead to Venus reaching Jupiter, a very abundant aspect coming up in June. So once Venus gets past this, then there can be even more abundance. So we will get past this challenge on the world level if there's anything about money. And again, I don't think it's going to be anything too severe or, to worry about. This might be a temporary hiccup at the end of the week, but then it's going to lead to a lot more abundance after the full moon. All right, so that's what I'm seeing for Thursday night. The moon gets past that aspect, and then we get to Friday on May 29. And there's only one major aspect and 2 minor aspects, which is the only minor aspect I use, the in conjunction. So on Friday, the moon, first aspect is the moon making a trine to Jupiter first thing in the morning, which that's good. It can set the tone for the rest of the day, where now the moon and Jupiter were, rather than the square that they were in a couple days prior, now they're in more of a harmony and flow. So the mood can be in a better balance. Things cannot, might not be over the top as much or overextended as much. Things are flowing, but it's still emotional. It's still more inner where this trine is happening, and that's the only trine for the day, because again, the rest of the day just has inconjunctions, which are kind of irritating and not as smooth. And plus, we're still kind of carrying over this Venus-Saturn, and so it kind of carries over into Friday as well. Anything that came up on Thursday in relationships or money, it's still kind of being worked out here on Friday. But yeah, first thing in the morning, that moon Jupiter will be the easiest aspect for people. Actually, geez, why do I keep getting this mixed up? It's Friday evening by the time this aspect is exact. So let me back this up. That shows that most of all day Friday, the moon isn't, so let me get this back to Friday on May 29th. So yeah, for most of the day, the moon isn't making any major aspects, so it's really, the energy is carried over from Thursday until the moon kind of makes this next aspect to Jupiter by Friday evening. So most of the day on Friday is still challenging, generally speaking, here for people. Again, I don't think every single person will experience a challenge, but the background for what's going on in the world still mostly is about this Venus-Saturn that's going to start slowly separating from that and moving forward from that first quarter. And the moon in Scorpio is still debilitated. It's still being ruled by Mars in debilitation. So that's why it's even worse than normal, because, actually, let me change that up. There's a reception here because the moon is being ruled by Mars, and Mars in Taurus, the moon likes Taurus. The moon is exalted in Taurus. It's not a mutual reception, but there is a reception here on some level, can kind of help a little bit, but still, these placements aren't easy. They're still considered debilitated placements. So it still has a lot about money and resources, I think, is one of the bigger things that are taking place, again, for Thursday into Friday. So prepare yourself. Now, right now we're seeing all-time highs again for the general markets, like the S&P, and sorry, there's some interference going on here. I would just expect some sort of a financial adjustment by the end of the week. Let's just put it that way, and I'll move on here. Okay, so the moon is kind of in between here, carrying over the energy of Thursday all day Friday until it makes that trine with Jupiter by Friday evening and Friday night, which does show that there could be a better mood, better circumstances, better feelings of things happening. Sorry, let me move my phone further away. It's interfering here. All right. And this better connection to Jupiter will lead to the Sagittarius full moon, which generally is a super positive full moon, in my opinion, one of the best full moons coming up. One second, I'll be right back here. Okay. So this is going to be a turning point for what's been going on Thursday into Friday and the challenges. I think it's going to turn into something a little bit easier. We still have to get through an opposition with Uranus, but looking at the chart, this is also the day where Neptune is in conjunct to the South Node. That's super rare in this position. So again, 4 degrees is where this inconjunction is perfect. So what's this world development, the world reality that's shifting for this new era? We're having to adjust to things of the past. Again, there's things about health here. I would say that, some of the stuff going on in the world about health and what's coming out about health, I would not necessarily just believe everything you hear on that world stage around health stuff. There could be some distortions, or the world is having to make some adjustments to health and illusions or distortions in some way, possibly there, just a minor aspect though. And then the moon is also in conjunct to Mercury for the last aspect on Friday night. And Mercury's at 25 degrees, so the moon reaches that. Yeah, super. It'll be late on Friday. So the mood and the feelings are having to be adjusted to how people are thinking and communicating. Again, Gemini is typically more playful, lighthearted, clever, witty, outward, social, and the mood is more inward, more private, more about controlling feelings and not being as expressive, whereas Mercury in Gemini is pretty good to express self and communicate openly. So just two different vibes going on there for the last aspect until we get to the following day on Saturday, May 30th, and the moon for early morning is at the very last degrees of Scorpio. The first aspect is that moon making it in conjunction to Chiron. That is now fully in 29 degrees that I talked about earlier. And keep in mind, you might have 29 degrees of one of the cardinal signs, but you also have minutes. So it won't be exact for you until, Chiron reaches 29 in the exact minute that your positions are in. So check your chart, but it's still tight, a really tight orb, within 1 degree if you have 29. And so once again, we're picking up on vulnerability and insecurity, the self, what we need to change or what's being highlighted that needs to heal in some way about the self. So another round of a little bit of sensitivity there, possibly. But then there's a change, and the moon will ingress Sagittarius, which is always, in my opinion, a nice change from Scorpio to Sagittarius when it comes to the moon. It's like coming out of the deep end into a sign that's more about what's above and beyond, more uplifted. Now there's still volatility and unpredictability right as this happens, and Sagittarius is one of the signs that's going to be revolutionized and even radicalized and really going through major changes this next 7 years because of Uranus and Gemini. All the mutable signs are going to be shaken up out of their old paths and out of their old delusions and things that have been in play for the last 14 years. This Uranus transit is breaking people out of those things. And this full moon in Sag will be one of the first illuminations of what this is talking about, but there's going to be so much more. It's not just instant. So as the moon comes into Sagittarius, now it's being rolled by Jupiter. That's exalted in Cancer. It's just going to be wrapping up this Jupiter Cancer transit. After this full moon is kind of like bringing that to a head of what Jupiter has been showing for the past year in this position. Not quite a year, but almost a year. And there's also another round of a mutual reception again, because the moon being rolled by Jupiter in Cancer, and the Jupiter in Cancer is being rolled by the moon in Sagittarius. So now there's this, once again, a better connection and a better mood and better opportunity and better feelings. And sometimes, I've said this in the past, it's like, yes, this is generally a more uplifting, positive change for the mood and the circumstances when the moon comes into Sag every month. But Sagittarius is a big sign. It's about expansion and growth. So if there's other things that are difficult happening in the background, the moon in Sagittarius can just amplify that even more so. But generally it is more positive. There's a mood here that's more outward now, but again, it has that connection to Cancer as well, of the more inward home and family side, and people's needs and feelings are going to be stronger from this point forward because, again, this Sag moon will come back to Jupiter with Venus approaching Jupiter. The two planets that represent abundance and astrology are coming together here. And there can be some sort of a major turning point after this full moon as we get into June that shows that life is going to get a little bit easier for some people. I would say generally for all of us, and I can't guarantee that every single person will receive some major benefit or opportunity, but I think overall the vibes will get easier for people with this dynamic of Venus and Jupiter that I talked about earlier with the new moon, that this result in something of opportunity for people in your Cancerian area of life, and just a general turning point. But with the moon in Sag, there's also a need for more adventure, more fun, more freedom and independence, and looking at what's above and beyond. It brings more emphasis on beliefs and faith and spirituality. For some people, for other people, there's more of a need for fun and play and adventure and seeking of something. And again, it all depends on where a person stands about beliefs and philosophy, but it's also the sign of truth. And the moon has a lot of light. So I would say right as the moon comes into Sag here on Saturday morning, the full moon vibes are on. Because even though the full moon will be the next day on May 31st, early in the morning, it's almost like the peak of the full moon will almost be Saturday night, because it's going to be, by the time you get to Sunday night, the moon will be well past its peak fullness. I mean, it's still going to be a full moon, don't get me wrong, but the exact full moon will be closer to Saturday night than Sunday night, technically. And the world won't know that. Everybody will be talking about the full moon on Sunday night, really not realizing the exact, moment that it was actually full. And I'll show you that when I get further into this. But full moon vibes are still very strong here. But there's also generally, especially the fact that it comes back to Jupiter with Venus approaching Jupiter, it's going to increase people's general desire for things, their needs for things, and it could kind of result in a lot of overindulgence from this point forward too. But hey, maybe that's okay every once in a while to overindulge. Maybe it's needed if there's been some restrictions or limitations in other ways before all this happened. All right, so let's look at this here, May 30th. The first aspect will be the moon opposite Uranus. So again, there's still some volatility, some unpredictability that's happening. It's a culmination point for what we've seen come out with the Sun Uranus. This full moon is bringing that culmination. It's like we should be aware of what has been shaken up or how we're thinking differently about things in a certain area of life. And again, this is also trying to change Sagittarius, to start to bring new thoughts and new ideas about what is true and faith and belief in things and education. This is an educational full moon. There's a turning point for education in the world that's going to result in what shows by next week after this full moon is passed and everything's coming out. This next couple weeks, we'll see some changes in education systems, and philosophy is starting to change too with this new era. Again, this is a radical new era for all the mutable signs and what they mean. So it also affects health, and changes to health, changes to ideas about health, changes to ideas about just the collective unconsciousness and how the world has been in a certain kind of mindset and a kind of a reality, a false reality in a lot of different ways. This is going to be, this next 7 years, this Uranus transit, to really break people out of the old ideas of things and radicalize it into new things. And it doesn't mean it's just perfect. Like, Uranus isn't some savior here. It can change ideas and radicalize ideas in challenging ways too. It's just going to change whatever has been in the background for the world for many years already. So things are starting to also, there's opposition here. That's what a full moon is. It's building up to this peak opposition. So that opposition also plays out in the world. But things can get radical too on the streets, the local environment, traveling. There could be some, something going on with traveling here, perhaps on Saturday that's more unpredictable, or just have to be kind of very flexible and adaptable this weekend. I mean, there's been that need already with the Sun Uranus and Gemini season, but especially now with the moon in Sagittarius, also a mutable sign, more flexibility, more openness to change is needed here. And it can also really peak the nervous system for people's restlessness and nervousness. And there's kind of a need to do something, to create a change of some type. If you're just still, or more inward with this Cancer vibe of just playing it safe and not doing much, then it can really like shake up people to try to do something or change something or be more active and outward. Things like that could start to pick up. And then it is a fateful day as well on Saturday because the moon forms a T-square with the nodes of fate. So whatever's happening on Saturday, the world's at a crossroads about making decisions, or whatever is happening will have long-term effects on the future. Again, we're picking up on the Virgo area that I've been talking about, that's requiring changes, letting go of perfection. Sagittarius is not about the details. Sagittarius is about looking at the bigger concepts of things. Again, what's above and beyond, and philosophy and spirituality. It's such a big sign of expansiveness that it's at odds with Virgo, the details of things. That's asking people to let go of the need for perfectionism and having everything just right. And also, again, looking at your beliefs and your faith differently, but also your beliefs about health, and even the world is what the world says. The distortions to health in the world are trying to be like updated and changed. And then looking at, again, the Pisces side of imagination and what's real and what's not real, and how we work with compassion and empathy. And we always have to be careful with the sign of Pisces to not be a doormat, to not be used and abused, or try to save people that don't want to be saved. It's like Pisces has a signature of trying to save people or be saved. And that can be to our detriment, and kind of what the world's also been going through on one level for 14 years, with Neptune enhancing all that and amplifying all that stuff about Pisces. So we're also looking at truth in a different way, and what's real and what's not real when it comes to what we give, what we sacrifice for, and things like that. So again, the world is just at a very fateful crossroads on Saturday. And let's see here. Then, man, that Eurasian dove in the background's been testing my patience for weeks. Wakes me up at 5 o'clock a.m. every morning. Little does it know I have a hunting license, but I've been showing a lot of mercy so far. Anyway, side note. Moon trine Neptune also comes in. So this can also be, like, again, people are more inspired, more visionary, and looking at this new era of Aries and what we want to create for this next phase of life. What are our dreams now? So there's more of an opening into action and adventure and dreams and trying to create that. And also our beliefs about those things, and looking at the self and what we believe about the self, what's possible, and trying to develop faith in the self as well, and having to rely on the self with this era of Saturn in Aries. It's no longer about, again, trying to be saved and waiting for somebody to drop something into our lap. It's like, no, we have to make it happen for the self. And we can't just expect the world to save us. Can't expect government to save us anymore. It's all about taking self-responsibility in this next era. And then the last aspect will be the moon sextile Pluto. So there's a better connection here to the group, to the community. The intensity that's been in the background is, peaking with the full moon, but it'll be at a turning point to become better after this point. But there is a better connection to also looking at truth and beliefs about science, about technology, about AI, about the power control dynamics, about politics, about your groups and your friends and organizations and what you're involved in with the community. But also these two positions like freedom as well. So they like friends and community, but they also like their space and their freedom and, not getting too wrapped up in deep emotions and feelings. But we still have that Cancerian vibe that's super strong down here, on the inward level, that still adds more sensitivity than otherwise, still adds a little more of a nurturing vibe. But the moon, And Sagittarius isn't typically a moon that likes to be too smothered or overly nurturing, so that more sensitive nurturing is more like in a home environment or with personal people that you love and stuff, or more of a private area of life. This is more on an outward level with friends and community that's a little more detached. And then let's see here, we move forward and we get to the full moon, which will be on Sunday on May 31st. Now let me show you how this moon moves forward on Saturday night. Wait, Mars. Okay, it's not going to make that in conjunction until Sunday to Mars. So again, this is late on Saturday night. And right as we come into May 31st on Sunday, it's pretty much the full moon vibes. So it's like, again, late on Saturday night into Sunday, especially when you're on the West Coast, it's like full moon first thing on super early Sunday morning. So by the time we get to Sunday night, the moon is going to be far past the exact opposition with the sun, which is the perfect full moon. But it'll still be full moon. The moon will still have a lot of light on it on Sunday and Monday. I'm just saying it's perfected here super early in the morning. And the moon is at odds with Mars, making an adjustment right as we come into Saturday night into Sunday. Let me just align the moon perfectly for the full moon here. It's going to be at 9 degrees. Almost 10. Nine degrees, 56 minutes, I think. 55 minutes. All right, so this is the exact perfect full moon here on Sunday, May 31st at 9 degrees of Sagittarius and 55 minutes. So 9 to 10 degrees is the exact. And if you have that in your chart, do you have a personal planet or a point in your chart? Always look at the 4 angles of your chart. And that's why I like Placidus, because it gives us the exact degree of cusps and angles, not just generally, with whole sign, but look at your chart. Despite whatever house system you use, you'll still have an MC point, that talks about the top of the chart. That should be the 10th house, but if you're using whole sign, it might not be. But anyway, my point is always look at the 4 angles of the chart. If you have 9 to 10 degrees of the mutables on the angles of your chart, those are super important too for major events. And then check if you have a personal planet at 9 to 10 degrees, especially Sagittarius. And a personal planet is the inner planets, not the outer planets. If you have an outer planet there at 9 to 10 degrees, then your whole generation is being activated in something bigger that's beyond yourself and not just personally, unless your own personal planet is conjunct an outer planet there, which the only outer planet in this generation, well, depending on your age, I guess, but mostly there's going to be people that have like Neptune in Sagittarius right there or something, the generation of the 70s. And then also the 60s generation might have Virgo at around 9, Pluto and Uranus and Virgo around 9 or 10. But that's, again, generational stuff unless you have a personal planet attached to it. So again, just check your chart to see where you have Sagittarius in general. And some people, will say, I don't have Sagittarius in my chart, but you do. It doesn't matter if you don't have planets there, that's fine, but you have a certain area of your life that's all about Sagittarius. So you have to check the house of Sagittarius. And whatever that is for you personally, that's where something's coming to a head. And what this is talking about is roughly 6 months ago, at the end of 2025, we had a Sagittarius new moon. And now, roughly 6 months later, we're having a full moon in Sagittarius. So things that have been in play for the last 6 months are kind of coming to a head in this temporary way for your house of Sagittarius. But looking at the full moon here at 9 degrees, What major aspects are we seeing here? Moon is applying towards Saturn, so that's going to be one of the strongest aspects. It's the strongest one, especially because it's applying towards Saturn. So that's good. This full moon is in good harmony with Saturn, responsibility in the world and karma, and it can be easier with how we're working with duty and obligations and commitments and the more serious side of life. So this wants to show that there's a turning point for the world, generally speaking, for things to become easier after this full moon. And this full moon is being ruled by Jupiter, exalted. And again, this full moon is trying to close out this Jupiter transit from this point forward. It'll be on the last stretches of Jupiter in Cancer. Now, Jupiter is approaching 24 degrees, so it's still in its retrograde shadow from where it went retrograde last year until it gets past 25 degrees. Then Jupiter will enter new territory. So if you have 26, 27, 28, and 29 degrees of Cancer in your chart, a personal planet there, you never got the Jupiter transit over those planets last year before it went retrograde. So, and Jupiter moves over those planets once every 12 years. And so other people that have earlier Cancer already went through multiple passes of Jupiter, especially the middle degrees. But if you have 26 through 29 Cancer, June is going to be a blessing for you, especially 26, because that's 25 to 26 is where Venus and Jupiter will meet up in June. And so the later degrees of Cancer still have something coming that they never really got support as much this last year. And this will be a turning point for more support, more opportunity in some way. So both in your Sagittarius area of life and your Cancerian area of life, because this full moon is still in a mutual reception with Jupiter. So it still has a lot about wanting to show where people stand with what they need, their feelings of things, their home and their family and property, and where they stand with safety, security, and comfort in life. And this will illuminate what people need and how people feel about things. And then generally, being in Sagittarius, it's also going to highlight everything that Sagittarius is about, which deals with what's above and beyond. So there's an illumination about the bigger picture of life coming for people. There can be more insights about where the world stands and where we're headed based on what the developments are this week into next week in the world, on the world stage. It could also be a major turning point for things in the world on certain levels, especially even for the United States, because this full moon is on the United States ascendant, which is about 12 degrees. So this full moon will be crossing the United States ascendant, so that's, again, important illumination, an important turning point for the United States in some major way. Plus Venus is going across the United States sun and activating the sun square Saturn in the United States. So important things for sure about the United States here that are coming to light and being seen. And then again, it's this turning point into this new era that I've been speaking about for the mutable signs. What people believe in and their philosophy of things are kind of being illuminated to process and reflect on and see. And then for other people, it can be spirituality, your faith in things, your belief in things, truth. Sagittarius is a truth sign, especially in a bigger concept of, again, not the details as much, but what's above and beyond. And, how people see the world, and wherever you have Sagittarius in your own chart. And then, again, it's affecting all of the mutable signs. So if you have 9 degrees of Pisces, 9 degrees of Virgo, and even 9 degrees of Gemini, then you might have to face a reality check in some way, a truth check. Like, it may not be as easy for you to kind of get in touch with what is trying to come out for you to understand and see. And you might be forced to kind of see things in a different way, a different perspective. Plus, Mercury will be reaching a critical degree and changing signs too, changing the general perspective and perception of things after this full moon brings things out for people to see in a new way. And then the truth about health, the truth about work, is being exposed, and the truth of things that are hidden behind the scenes, scandals, conspiracies are coming out to be seen in a different light temporarily, because there's other things too, that not just everything happens right instantly here, but on certain levels of life. And again, education is at a turning point. The way the world is going to structure education will be changing, and it's going to be an ongoing situation for the next 7 years. So this is just one part of it. It's not everything. But again, education, this is also highlighting travel, and changes in travel will also be a part of this new era, and this full moon could bring something out about transportation and travel and technology and things that will be changing in the world on that level. And again, there's a lot about home and family stuff too, because it comes back to Jupiter here. And a potential good news could result, good opportunities could result. And this could be a sense of people have big needs, big feelings, and again, that could lead to a lot of overindulgence and spending of money, making big purchases sometime after this full moon into June with things, or getting support. If you've been waiting on some level of support in some way, or something financial, or a deal, a property deal, real estate stuff, this can be a major turning point for your Cancerian area of life too. Of course, it's different based on your birth chart, unless your Aries rising, where Cancer is in the fourth. But just check again your Cancer area of life and your Sagittarius area of life, because those two areas can be the most supported in this phase right now. All right, so there's that. And overall, I think it's a super positive full moon. It's not. It has. I'm sorry. There's another interference. 1 second here. Really annoys me. Okay. There is one in conjunction pretty tightly to Mars. So there is one adjustment people have to make to the more aggressive side and the conflict, that has to make an adjustment. Military plans and military activity will have to make an adjustment based on this turning point of what comes out here this weekend into next week. And again, the building trine to Saturn shows that this full moon and the turning point into June can lead to some sort of a stabilization or a commitment, just in a better alignment with authority generally here too. And the authority is the self in this phase. Again, we are our own authority. Of course, there's always external rules and laws that we have to deal with and live up to, but ultimately, again, it's always about taking responsibility for the self in this phase, for this kind of structuring this new sense of responsibility for the future. And Sagittarius can also have this connection about the future, again, seeing the future in a new way, having new insights and realizations about things. This can also highlight culture issues, things about culture coming to a head in the world, seeing a lot come out in some way there. So those are the kind of different ways I'm looking at the full moon. But there's a turning point in your Sagittarius area of life for the rest of the year now, whatever that is for you. And then right after that full moon, the moon does make the trine to Saturn. So it still has the ability to be more mature and serious. Whoops, went too far there. More mature and serious. But the Sagittarius moon isn't always the most serious, plus the opposition to Gemini. This is pretty light-hearted energy typically. Likes to have fun, it likes to be adventurous, it likes to joke around, be a smart ass. The vibes are just changing. It can also highlight things about sports, which I haven't been following sports for years, so I don't know what's going on in sports, but Sagittarius is a sports sign. So some sort of something coming to a head or a turning point generally around sports and more fun, adventurous, outward kind of activities. All right, so then the moon is in conjunct to Venus, and we're having to make a lot of adjustments between our mood, our feelings, our needs, and our adjustments to home and family and relationships and the more sensitive sides, because they're on two different pages. Again, Venus in Cancer. Venus in Cancer, again, likes to show love through nurturing and caring for people and, more of an emotional, sensitive type of desire and love placement. But the moon in Sagittarius likes freedom and independence and doesn't like to get smothered too much. So they're kind of on two different pages here by Sunday night, or Sunday afternoon, rather. And then the last aspect will be Mercury reaching the last critical degree of Gemini. So there's also a sense of urgency now for how people are thinking and communicating what's on their minds. And we're looking at that 29 degrees of Aries in a different way. Or something could happen to make people feel better about themselves. Or there could be good news that feels like it adds something more healing for people or just better support for people. And again, words have power to heal in this dynamic. It's more likely to be words that are positive and healing rather than words that can harm. There's always that chance, of course, if you're, being a jerk or something, but it's mostly an opportunity to heal the mind through communication and looking at confidence in a new way and vulnerabilities in a better way. But again, still a sense of urgency. And so again, when the world is talking about the full moon on Sunday night, this will be, the moon will be, around 19, 20 degrees, excuse me. And the sun is at 10. So it's, again, it already peaked 18, 20 hours before this, but it'll still be a bright moon in the sky and you can still consider it a full moon. But if you're one of those people that like to see the exact full moon, then you're gonna want to be up late on Saturday night into early Sunday morning when it's perfect. All right, so there's that, and then we move forward and we get to Monday on June 1st. In the beginning of the day, the moon is still in Sagittarius, still full moon vibes. And Mercury is going to be changing signs. And that will be actually the first thing that happens on Monday is Mercury ingressing Cancer, which is a pretty big change now. And now this Uranus in Gemini and the Sun in Gemini, it's being ruled by this Mercury. So it even changes a lot about what's going on in this Gemini area. So now, consider this. Wherever Mercury goes this next 7 years through the zodiac once a year, is where that revolutionary radical change wants to try to happen. So it's rooted in Gemini, which is people's thoughts and minds and communications and technology and the local streets and local environment. Everything's going to be so changeable there. But now there's also a need to look at changes in the home and the family and property and people's emotional needs and what will give you safety, security, and comfort. So, and then when Mercury goes to Leo, it's going to change Leo and then Virgo and all around the zodiac for the next 7 years in different ways. But right now, Mercury in Cancer, it changes people's minds and perceptions and style of communicating to be a lot more sensitive now. Plus, now we have 3 planets in Cancer all of a sudden, which, we're not even in Cancer season yet. So again, there's a lot more sensitivity with how people are going to start thinking and communicating, and also thinking more about safety and security and comfort and what people need and want and desire, which has a strong opportunity of delivering that in June with this Venus-Jupiter now approaching each other stronger and stronger every day. But we also see that the moon is in conjunct to Jupiter, still in a mutual reception for the first part of Monday, still connected to this home and family in such a big way. But it's going to change. The moon is going to change as the day goes on here. So again, back to Mercury. Generally, Mercury in Cancer, it's more intuitive. It's not always as direct in communication. Again, Cancer the crab sidesteps and has that shell to protect it, to guard it, and that can be through words and how people communicate themselves. They might not want to be as open, as direct sometimes, which will clash with all this Aries as well as it goes on, moves forward here. Plus Mercury is already with an orb to the square of Neptune. So we're going to have to work things out too about how we look at home and family stuff and, again, property and your needs and all that. Wherever you have Cancer in your birth chart, that's going to be a new kind of thought process that's coming in based on what comes out with this full moon, what illuminates our beliefs and our philosophy and our ideas about different things. All right, so then the moon is trine Chiron, though, right before it changes signs from Sagittarius. Another good aspect to Chiron at that last critical degree. So people can feel better about themselves, have more confidence, and look at where they have these issues in a better way, a better mood, a better feeling about it in a temporary way for a few hours there on Monday afternoon. So it looks like the moon will be in Sagittarius for most of the day. It's going to be by Monday night that there'll be a mood change. So kind of carries over the full moon vibes all through Monday as well. So I would say Saturday, peaking on Sunday, and Monday are full moon vibes of peak intensity, peak emotional energy. That's big, above and beyond, indulgent. And then things will change by late on Monday night as the moon will ingress Capricorn now for the next 2.5 days, which begins its waning phase of this cycle. So now as the moon on late Monday comes into Capricorn, it's being ruled by this Saturn again. So it comes back to the self. But this is also going to be a phase with a lot of world developments that come about after that full moon. So I do think that the United States, the world's at some sort of a turning point for major developments. So it brings more of a serious mood compared to Sagittarius moon. Now things are much more serious, much more earthly, more practical, and this phase is generally about, okay, now that we're at that turning point, we have to look at our goals, our ambitions, and what's ahead. What do we want to achieve, or where do we stand with achievement and past plans and ideas of things? And also looking at our safety, security, both in the home and the family area and emotions, but also safety, security for work and money and the physical, material, practical side of life. So it tones things down. It also creates a stronger emotional need for responsibility and commitment and duty and being punctual and taking care of business. And the moon is considered debilitated here, and it's being ruled by a debilitated Mars. So next week's report, the moon will have to square that and really bring that challenge out for people's responsibilities and where they stand with the more serious side of life versus the more indulgent side of life that they would rather be dealing with and have by next week. And I'll get into that in next week's report. And then the moon is also opposite Mercury, so it's kind of continuing a culmination point here about people's thoughts that have changed, the perception, the communication style have changed into safety, security issues on these two different levels of life. So it can also bring out important news and information with the moon opposite Mercury. And then the very last aspect will be the moon in conjunct to Uranus and showing some adjustment to this more radical side of life, the local streets, the local environment, transportation, people's communication, and technology and AI and all these other things that are really highlighted. And that is the last aspect for this report week. So that's pretty much what I have for you here. Appreciate you watching. Hit that thumbs up if you like my video, you like my reports, and you want more. I appreciate you. And I hope you have a great week ahead.